Climate justice addresses the just division, fair sharing, and equitable distribution of the benefits and burdens of climate change and responsibilities to deal with climate change. With rising temperatures, human lives, particularly in the disadvantaged, are affected by compromised health, financial burdens, and social and cultural disruptions. So, the perspective in which I'd like to speak to you today is around the effects of climate change for persons with disabilities, particularly those living with albinism. I myself am a professional, as Dr. Rose has introduced me, but I do live with a hidden disability, and that gives me a passion around advocacy for persons with disabilities. And I do hope my participation in this, along with other forums, will be a small contribution that can change even one person's life and encourage more collaboration to come up with solutions. So the effects of climate change on vulnerable populations, specifically persons living with albinism. Albinism is a genetic condition that leads to a lack of pigmentation in the hair, skin, and eyes, causing vulnerability to the sun and bright light, and it affects all races. Melanin controls the pigmentation, color in skin, eyes, and hair. And as I've said, it's across all races. And it plays a major role in the development of optic nerves as well. So people with albinism tend to have vision problems. People with albinism struggle with the effects of climate change, which has led to extreme weather patterns, which are not favorable to their sensitive skins. And health experts say people with albinism are disproportionately affected by the ultraviolet rays produced by the sun, and they are major victims of skin cancer. Due to the harsh temperatures caused by climate change, they develop chronic irritation as well. So climate change is regarded as a threat multiplier to these most vulnerable persons in our communities. And many of our more disadvantaged communities that are still lagging behind in terms of adaptation and mitigation techniques tend to lead to compromising the health and access to economic activities for persons who are vulnerable. People with albinism are sometimes deterred from doing certain types of work because of exposure to the sun and having long or even for long or short periods, and this affects opportunities for them to earn a living. Some people with albinism live far away from water sources, thus they have to travel long distances in search of water, which then exposes them to sunburn. Sunscreen lotions are essential for people with albinism, and governments must ensure that they get them, ideally at no cost, so that they can protect their skin from irritation. Although there's no cure for albinism, people with the disorder can take steps to protect their skin and eyes, which can maximize their vision. And as I've mentioned, one of the major ways is through skin lotions that have a sunscreen component, creams which have a sunscreen. However, sunscreens and protective clothing that they need to protect themselves, even umbrellas, are expensive. So there's a direct correlation between poverty and the adverse effects of climate change in albinism. So what are some of the mitigations? Afforestation and reforestation through normalizing planting of trees plays a great part in mitigating climate change. Also, governments should prioritize budgeting for medical interventions within their health budgets, where specialists, doctors, those who look after persons who face challenges from diseases that emanate from climate change should be prioritized, and budgets should be put aside to subsidize or even offer free sunscreens to vulnerable populations. Social protection programs that cater for this group of vulnerable people and More vulnerable climate change action itself should be increased within the social protection programs of governments. And cooperation between private and public sector can help to deal with the effects of climate change. In the energy sector, use of renewable energy, such as green energy and energy efficiency techniques, has been and should continue to be lobbied as one of the most efficient and sustainable ways of mitigating global warming. Climate smart agriculture practice by farmers is also another way of adapting to climate change that can raise livelihoods. I've mentioned about farming being one of the major economic activities, and persons with albinism may not be able to engage in as many hours as they need to grow their crops unless they have protection. But climate smart agriculture practices should be encouraged. And the Sustainable Development Goal number 13, which calls for urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts, is among the main focus goals that governments should prioritize in implementing the SDGs. So, having discussed this, I'd like to say in summary that climate change is a justice issue because climate change is a threat to everyone's physical health, mental health, air, water, food, and shelter. But some groups that are socially and economically disadvantaged face the greater risks. This is because of where they live, their health, income, and in this case, I've spoken about albinism and this particular group of people living with disabilities. So I would like to end my lecture there and hand this back over to our moderator, Dr. Rose Green. Thank you very much.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Okay. Thanks, Rosalind. Very short and to the point as well. So to our listening audience, for our international speakers, a few speakers, of course, you are hailing from Africa, and we had a bit of connection issues. So while it is that we wait to see if the connections will be better, I will just be filling in a few things as we go along. So to our listening audience or to our viewing audience, we came up with the Global Climate Change Conference and reached out to various practitioners across the world. We utilize our efforts to spotlight projects and practitioners working for a greater good to help notable issues in equitable cities and regions across the world. We believe that the best solutions are effective partnered ecosystems that can result from collaboration and engagement across innumerable sectors and disciplines as well. And so we're forming the Global Climate Change Conference, GC3. It is designed to interest individuals to make a climate change agenda a priority and to bring awareness to offer logical perspectives through possible solutions as well. Of course, prioritizing a climate change agenda includes adapting small changes to our regular activities, or I should say our daily activities, that can help to eradicate long-term consequences. Unfortunately, a huge portion of our global audience failed to recognize the impact climate change has placed on our livelihood, and that affects our food, health, and energy, one might say. Um, just a few minutes ago, we have Rosalind who spoke on the effects in terms of climate justice and how it has impacted her, along the way. Our mission is to bring together leaders across all sectors to catalyze lasting relationships, alliances, and partnerships in an effort to share knowledgeable expertise and best practices to tackle the climate change agenda. As we speak one on one about some of the challenges that we're having, um, some of the things we will cover within the next, hour. Where I'll yes, one of the things we'll cover within the next hour. I just received a message from one of the speakers, so it threw me off for a second here. Yes, our mission is to bring together global leaders across all sectors to catalyze lasting relationship alliances and partnerships in an effort to share knowledgeable expertise and best practices to tackle the climate change agenda. Um, Earlier, as I've said, we had an opportunity to hear from Rosalind Lewe, and as she spoke about our climate justice piece and how it has affected her, I must say it is a pleasure to see our leaders, our speakers coming out um, to speak to us as are coming together for each speaker who actually takes the time out to be here today out of their busy schedule and to share within everything that is happening as it pertains to the climate change agenda, because right now it is of great importance. Prioritizing small steps that can be taken to decrease the levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide. Immediate actions need to be taken to reduce immediate actions need to be taken in order to reduce the gradual warming of the Earth's temperature, the melting of the ice sheets, the possible extinction of plants and animals due to the global warming. Of course, it is that we are not short of that in our perspective. These are things that are happening as we speak, and there are things that needs to be addressed. I've had this conversation with various persons across the aisle that are saying, well, it should be more of a it should be more of a governmental issue where it is that they are the ones that should take the initiative to ensure that everyone is actually getting out there and actually doing what making small steps in terms of global warming. But in truth and in fact, it is that we do need more persons to actually individuals, I should say, to step up to the plate and actually to take our responsibilities. And I don't think that it should be an issue that is resolved only through government. Of course, it is that certain things can be put into place, such as ensuring that there are rules and regulations that adhere to different elements that will make our planet much safer as well. It is important that we take action to combat climate change and its impact to numerous communities. Of course, we are seeing the effects worldwide, just not in one particular area, but across the aisle. It is my belief that we must also confront all climate risk with urgency. Going back to the climate change agenda, the Paris Agreement adopted in 2015, I will take note of that itself, where it aims to strengthen the global response to the threat of climate change by keeping a global temperature rise in the century well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. The agreement also aims to strengthen the ability of countries to deal with the impact of climate change through appropriate financial flows, a new technology framework, and an enhanced capacity building framework as well. It is a known fact that just about every country is affected by climate change, a threat to our global economies, and the time to act is now. We have seen a rise in carbon dioxide, of course, the CO2 levels. Each and every day, the weather patterns are changing. I mean, I must admit that, for instance, last week, where it is that I am now located in the Northeast, it was like playing, Powerball. One day it's 70 degrees, another day it's 50, it's 20. And so these are some of the effects. We are seeing the effects of climate change each and every day. The sea levels are rising, and the weather events are becoming more extreme as well. Whilst we continuously search for systemic change, because I think that is of value and it's something that we should adhere to, there's also the need to search to secure a more sustainable economy, preferably one that works for both people and our planet. I say that because with each and every turn that we take in terms of the climate change itself, it's something that needs to be relegated across the aisle and not just within one area. And it will involve a little bit of economical value as well, and with the approach that we take toward resolving the issues with the planet. As various countries look for new ways to stabilize their economies, we constantly, or I should say, we continuously seek resources and system that embodies clean, healthy, green, and safe living. I don't think that it's something that over time that we can escape from climate change without visiting systems that are, as I said, that embodies clean, healthy, green, and safe living lifestyle. We are seeing where climate change has already exacerbate storms and disasters. We are waking up each and every day to daily threats. It is my belief that if we do not act fast, we will be faced with food and water scarcity sooner, I should say, than we imagine. So it is of relevance that for now, these are some of the things that we need to adhere to and move as quickly as possible. We must make immediate actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as well, and building climate resilience. A major priority is that there is a need to trigger long term systemic shifts that can change the trajectory of CO2 levels in the atmosphere. And what can we do to solve the climate change issues as well? That is one of the questions that um, we would like our speakers to, speak about, and to keep our community, our live feed community abreast as to what are some of the things we can do to solve the climate change issues as we speak. So we are going to, we have Paulette who posed that question to Rosalind. Rosalind, um, Paulette would like to know what are some of the things that you would use to solve the climate change issues um, that are so current and facing right now. Are you there, Rosalind? Or she's on
Yes, sorry, I was on mute.
mute.
Um, Thank you so much for the question. That's from Paulette.
Yes.
All right. So some of the things that I highlighted in my particular lecture, which was focusing on persons with albinism. I myself do not have albinism, as you can see. My melanin is quite, strong,
Intact.
intact.
Intact. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do live with an invisible disability, a condition that is a chronic pain condition. It's something that I manage. But if I focus much on where I focus my lecture, I spoke about the need to make available what persons with albinism would need to protect themselves from the effects of the extreme heat, the
Mhm.
exposure to the ultraviolet rays of the sun, which predisposes them to skin cancer because they do not have the protection of the pigmentation in their skin. And so they need perhaps subsidies or free sunscreen lotions that have sunscreen or creams. Just the way when there's a medical crisis, governments make this available to people because of just the extreme crisis and the need on such a large scale. So it requires just raising the awareness and getting some of these things within policy. And sometimes interventions can also be done at community level through collaborative efforts. We can have public-private partnerships where organizations and stakeholders work together to make protective sunscreens, protective clothing, protective umbrellas, protective gear available to persons in the communities who require this, to survive, because skin cancer can lead to death. And then also, I spoke a bit about some of the just general standard ways of mitigating climate change, which was around afforestation and reforestation, where we need to normalize tree planting. And normalizing tree planting actually begins at the household level. So within our own households, how we are raising our children, teaching the younger generation that planting trees is something that we need to normalize. And from the household level, it goes to the community level, and then up to the national level. So even before it becomes a policy issue, if we as citizens, global citizens, can normalize tree planting, because when we have afforestation, reforestation, that definitely reduces the impact of global warming and the effects thereof. I've also spoken about the use of clean energy. It's something that Dr. Greenrose was sharing very eloquently when she was speaking during the, um, the break. So the use of clean energy and just having the renewable energy and energy efficiency technologies is something that we can incorporate in our daily lives. So this can be done again at household levels. A lot of these things do not really require directives from governments. They're things that we can implement at a small way, even at our homes, and all of this builds up into a huge impact. So not cutting down trees, for firewood, but using other renewable energy sources. Um, I've spoken about climate smart agriculture practices by farmers. And this allows them to increase their livelihoods as well as sustaining the environment. Um, so I've spoken about even affirmative action. As much as this is more directly in terms of encouraging livelihoods for persons with disabilities, but and specifically in this case, albinism, that I focus my lecture on, those are ways in which the impact that has happened to them because of the correlation in their inability to have access to finances can impact on directly correlates with their ability to access protective gear, sunscreens, and have a better livelihoods to protect themselves. Um, so those are some of the interventions. Um, so I think maybe I can hand it back to Dr. Rose Green so that we can open up the discussion a bit more. Thank you.
Hi, are you hearing me, Rosalind?
Yes.
Okay. So, Paul, the question for you as well. And he's not too versed on albinism and how it affects how climate change actually affects directly. If you
Right.
had to explain to him in a few words about albinism and the direct effects of climate change.
Okay. So thank you for the question. So it's the effect of climate change on persons living with albinism because they are more predisposed to the negative effects of increased temperatures and the increased exposure to ultraviolet rays from the sun, just by the nature of that they have less pigmentation or um, um, lower pigmentation in their skin. The melanin in the skin protects us from the effects of the sun rays. of the ultraviolet rays from the sun. So they are more disproportionately um, susceptible to things like skin cancer because of exposure to the sun rays. Also, remember, because of climate change, there has been prolonged droughts, and this leads to people having to travel long distances to look for water. I am from Africa. I come from Kenya, and like many African countries, there are parts of the country where even in 2022, people still have to trek long distances looking for a viable water that they can use for their livestock and for themselves. That having to move long distances, if you're someone who is uh, predisposed to getting sunburned and having negative effects from the sun, then it will make it difficult you to be in search of water. Also, not being able to move in in an exposed way to get to where you need to work. If your work is farming, the majority of economic activity in Africa is agriculture based economic activities, and that means you have to be in the outdoors. People who do trading in the outdoors. So this then impedes their ability to earn a living and to cater for their families. I hope that answers some of his questions.
Okay, so would you say that outside of climate justice, there's also um, other ways that um, climate change is affecting Kenya on a whole? Are you seeing difference in weather patterns as well?
Absolutely, we definitely are. In the olden days, it was very easy to predict the planting seasons because the weather patterns were very predictable. But like the rest of the world, those patterns have changed, and it and there's been prolonged seasons of drought. When there are prolonged seasons of drought, there's more pests. There's more pests infestations that come about. For example, right now in the month of March, early April, ideally is our planting season, but there was long season of drought. Then that delayed planting, and even when farmers were able to plant, because there was some signs of rain, they had already started pests like the armyworm, which affects a lot of the grain-based crops. And these kind of pests come up a lot when there are these, really extreme changes in weather patterns. So definitely in Kenya, we have been affected by the weather patterns. It affects agriculture from crop growing, crop protection issues now because of the pests, livestock and fisheries. All of that is affected due to the changes in weather patterns, which leads to changes in so many things, as I've mentioned. Yes.
Okay. On that note, we are going to jump to our video, and we will be right back with one of our other speakers as well. Stay tuned. we have our next speaker, Easter, who is having an issue with her connection. Easter, can you hear me? Easter, are you there? Okay. So what? So we're going to ask Easter to rejoin, to log off and rejoin, so her video can be available. And in the meantime, we're going to continue as Easter rejoins us. Okay. So far we have heard from Rosalind Olewe. I hope I'm pronouncing your name, Rosalind. You say your name better. Go ahead for me, please.
Yes, Rosalind Olewe Nunya.
You see what I'm talking about? I don't want it to mess up your name, so I'm glad that you got it correctly. Interesting.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
So as we talk about what are some of the issues, what are some of the solutions to solve climate change issues? I do believe that to address the climate change, we have to vastly increase our efforts. Of course, much is happening around the world right now. Yes, investments is renewable energy have soared, but so much more needs to be done. We strongly encourage realistic plans as well. Energy transformation is a priority, I would say, and the industrial systems, from industrial systems to transportation, would say food, agriculture, and forestry systems are part of the transformation that needs to happen immediately. This helps to ensure that we can limit the rise of the global temperature in various areas across the world. Checking on Easter to see if she is ready to go. So while I'm checking on Easter, I am going to jump to a commercial break and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. So I am going to try to add Easter to this conversation. Easter, how
Hello,
are
I hope
you?
you can. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Great to be here.
Yes. I know that we were having some connection issues as well. Are you all set with the connection issues? I can hear some feedback. Are you currently traveling?
Yes, I'm at the airport, so you might hear some announcements,
Okay.
but we can go ahead.
Okay. Well, I will have you jump right into. There is some music in the background.
1 minute. It's quite loud. My apologies.
Any remaining passengers are requested to board
That's better.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Easter?
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. I'll speak a little bit about the work we do as an institution, uh, and look at what then women at different spaces engage on in agriculture. My name is Easter Okech, and I work with Kenya Female Advisory Organization, KEFIADO. And our work looks at the issues of gender justice and social justice. And part of the conversations we are having is that when we are investing in women to look at economic justice, one of the has been engage and economic justice looks at issues of profit.
We're having some connection issues with you, Easter. As we, Easter,
work.
the connection is not coming in very strong. I'm hearing every other word. Are you hearing the same thing, Rosalind? You're on mute.
Apologies, I was on mute. It's breaking. I can't hear every other word. She's breaking.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So Easter, if you can, just give me a few minutes so that I will actually introduce the audience to just about what you do. And in the meantime, you can see if you can get a stronger connection as well. If you're unable to get a stronger connection, I think what we'll do is, yes, we have some of our audience that's saying it's coming in very choppy. So if you can try for a stronger connection, in the meantime, I'm going to talk to our listening audience and educate them just about who you are, and just about what we have to, what's your position in terms of your organization. Okay. So I will put you down, and you, when I see you come back in, then I will put you back into the room. Okay. So she is Easter is part of KEFIADO, and what KEFIADO does is that it works in collaboration with the Women Action Forum for Networking. It is a Kenya Alliance for Advancement of Children Rights, Sexual and Gender-Based Violence. It's a prevention network, which is a regional network with our secretariat in Kampala, Uganda, where she worked with gender thematic groups and national stakeholders network for human rights educators. Of course, the networking enhances the quality of social change and interventions as it facilitates exchange of methodologies. Because of her track record, KEFIADO has emerged as a lead NGO in the region and in these networks. KEFIADO's approach emphasizes analysis of cultural and traditional practices as an anchor to developing relevant interventions. One of the key strategies, or I should say the key strategy, is to target the community as a whole by engaging both girls, women, boys, men, through linkages with schools and communities, organizing community-level dialogues on harmful cultural and traditional practices and enhancing community awareness of human rights. It has carried Kefiado has carried out interventions in Western Kenya region, working in partnership with learning institutions, community-based organizations, authoritatively CBOs, and government agencies while networking locally, regionally, and internationally. Of course, it has worked extensively with rural communities on FGM and in exploring alternative rites of passage transitioned from adult to adulthood for girls. Community theater groups have also formed advocates for abolition of FGM and other forms of violence against women and to promote girls' education. School clubs have also been set up as platforms to share information and to debate human rights issues, of course. And I am seeing AM Easter. She's coming back in a few. So, our organization, Cafiado, is a non-partisan focused and strategic NGO addressing issues of human rights and gender in specific communities for improved development. It is also an inclusive and comprehensive capacity building organization that works to change the negative attitude of community members by addressing issues which affect them through advocacy and, of course, empowerment. And as they strive to ensure that gender issues are addressed effectively and included in developmental planning and policy making from the lowest levels, it asserts that women and children deserve equal treatment and equal rights, such as our boys and men in all spheres of life. I see Easter. I'm going to add her in and see exactly how is it going. Hi, Easter. Are you better?
Hi, how are you?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
All
Welcome.
right.
You may continue.
Thank you.
Yes.
And first of all, just mentioning the issue of gender, it is just good to note that a female person at the airport has actually given me space to actually be in this particular meeting. So shout out
Nice.
to that particular young woman who
Thank
has
you.
given me space to participate. So that is the solidarity of women is important.
Thank you. We
So,
appreciate that.
so I'll talk about the work that we do with women in agriculture and aquaculture, and also within the particular spaces where we look at the issues of gender justice and climate justice. For one of the issues which we engage on is that we look at a space where one, the climate change within the lake region affected where women worked, affected where they plowing, affected where they were staying. So that meant relocation. When you relocate from the spaces where traditionally those were your homes, then becomes such a challenge to then further engage and participate in businesses. So displacement comes with climate change. And when displacements come to climate change, one of the things which happens is that some of those women were even in the temporary camps where they had to be taken in by government. So when you look at that temporary change, means that you are not able to sustain yourself, your livelihoods are also then destroyed. So when we look at that particular issue, we rethink that how do we then ensure that government continues to support but also invest in addressing the vagaries of climate change at the lowest unit. But how do we then also ask for the women who then are in these particular spaces to be able to engage through the issues of budgets so that there is investment in the budgets by both national and the local governments. And when national and local governments invest, then they're able to then put up systems and structures which then can protect where these women work. Apart from that, we look at that the climate change affects because of the issues of like when the lake burst its banks, it meant that there are waterborne diseases coming in. When we're looking at the waterborne diseases and the issues of children and the issues of nutrition, then it still becomes a challenge for these particular women to participate. So climate change affects the different sectors of life. The social spaces where these women are is affected daily. And their families are also affected daily. And when there's displacement like that, the other effect within this particular engagement is that households then with lower income becomes the issues of gender-based violence then increases within these particular households. So part of the situations which we look at is that how is government looking at climate change holistically? How is government planning with communities in mind? And how are community voices participating in the way planning is done, so that when we look at what government is doing and when we look at how communities are engaging, they're able to plan and fit into what Kenya calls the medium-term expenditure framework. If we don't unpack this for the communities, then government will plan for people without the people being there. So when you look at the issues of climate justice, who has unpacked the issues of climate justice to community members? If we don't unpack the issues of climate justice to community members, then they will not be able to participate in the mitigation processes. We still find that climate justice issues is elite. It's at very high levels. It is not unpacked for community members. Then they're not able to engage holistically. So what must we change to ensure that it becomes an everyday conversation, to inform farmers, to inform children within their particular households that there's this issue called climate change. It will affect your environment. It will affect your engagement on your way to school. This is how you have to protect your space. It should not be something which we look at within boardrooms. It should not be something which we look at within workshops, but an everyday household conversation. So we trust that the government, for example, of Kenya, and then at the lower level, the sub-national governments are able to put this within the curriculum, the school curriculums, for example, so that then they're able to engage a whole lot more holistically when we are addressing the issues of climate change. But as we then address this particular issue, we also must look at that the policies of participation must also include women and also include girls. So when you're looking at the issues of participation, how are people equally participating within those particular spaces, so that each individual, whether male or female, should be able to have a space for this particular discourse, because they're affected differently. If you're a woman of reproductive age, if you're a woman who's pregnant, it's not similar to a woman of, if you're a woman of 25 of reproductive age and you're displaced because of the issues of flooding, or you're displaced because of the issues of drought, your engagement will be different from your male counterpart. Your male counterpart will also have different challenges within that particular space because of expectations from community about what they're supposed to be doing in terms of production, in terms of protection, yet they're not able to do the same thing. So part of it is that looking at this from an analysis where climate change affects all of us, but affects all people, both male and female, differently. So their participation must actually be unpacked, so that in terms of their participation, they'll be able to say that this is how it has affected me. I'm unable to get enough nutrition for myself and for my children. I'm unable to be able to be more productive at a different space. So if we are able to look at this, then we'll be able to plan a lot differently, create work, create spaces where people are able to speak up, create spaces where both young people and old people are having intergenerational conversations and intersectional conversations at different levels. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Easter. Um, we have a few questions for you as well. We have Ryan who would like to know, um, how does Kefiado plays into the climate change space? What are you doing? Is there anything that Kefiado does that to highlight the climate change? I think he joined late as well.
What we are doing to highlight climate change is that we are looking at what we are calling, because we are an African feminist organization. So we are having African feminist conversations with younger people at different levels. So we say that what we look at is that within particular schools, how are we engaging young people to have conversations to unpack what climate change is, so that it is included within, if it's not in the curriculum in the schools, then we are able to engage with it within the schools at community level. And then within the universities, we are also looking at how to engage the departments of gender to then start looking at the departments of gender, the schools of gender, and also within the particular space, the leadership to also start looking at gender justice and climate change. So young people within universities also start having it not only as an environmental issue, but as a social issue. So engaging with different universities within this particular region where we work, which is Western Kenya, is something which we are also doing. But we're also looking for different partnerships, because the conversations on climate change should not only be had like the recent one, which is in the West. We are looking at that the conversation should be at community level. So the partnerships which we are having right now is having cross-learning with different institutions, different bodies, and different individuals at community level, starting to have the conversations and putting government to task, because communities are the ones who are doing oversight. So when you're talking about communities doing oversight, then you have to put government to task. So the conversation must be unpacked so communities ask. We are lucky we are having an election. So part of it is that we are also asking the politicians that what are you going to do about climate change if you are coming into parliament? That should be an agenda for politicians. So part of it is that because we also invest in women political processes and young people's political processes, we are also tasking them to have that as an agenda, that when they get into parliament, are they at the both national and at the county level, that is at the sub-national level, are they going to be ensuring that the policies which Kenya has, the policies which they discuss at those international spaces, are then not just talked about at national level, but are unpacked and are actually implemented. As a country, we are very good at signing instruments. As a country, we are very good at adopting certain things at the international level, but we never unpack it at the community level, and we never then address it there. So part of the conversation is that we are willing to look at how we can look at the issues of climate justice, included with the issues of gender justice, but with the community voices, so that the community movements are the ones who then start speaking about it. So yes, Ryan, we are able to start caucusing and having very strong movements at community level, which for me must have a Pan-Africanist look. Sometimes we speak, but the face is not who we would like to see at community level. So the more people we have from an intersectional view at community level, then the movement which then speaks on the vulgarities and what we need will be at community level. And different people can join, and we look forward for a more solid engagement at that level.
Thank you so much. I have a question, and this is directed towards both Rosalind and Easter. So I explained to one of our listeners that in Kenya, there's actually snow as well, which some of our persons are unaware of. Could you talk about the snow within the area or the region in Kenya, and just how much it is that even with climate change, if it's affecting what's going on in each part, different areas of Kenya right now? I think Rosalind will go first.
All right. Thank you very much for that question. And I think it's very important when we receive such questions, because it raises awareness about parts of Africa that maybe the rest of the world is not familiar with, because the images that they see in the media do not really focus on the diversity within the African continent. So Kenya particularly is an amazing country, because we are on the equator, but we also have very high altitude areas. And this leads to very diverse microclimates within the country. Kenya is a country where within one day you can travel from the coast part of the country, where there's the sandy beaches, and it's a warm, humid, sunny climate, and move along into the central part of the country, where you find mountains which have snow, and go again further towards the Rift Valley and find very cold temperatures again, and continue to the western part of the country, which is around the equator, and it's very hot, and that's near Lake Victoria. Easter was speaking about women who engage in acti- activities around Lake Victoria, for example. So yes, we do have snow in Kenya. It is and like many parts of the world, we have been experiencing melting of snow. And, you know, this snow comes into catchment areas where we have the rivers. And so all of the effects that you find in very similar kind of microclimates where you have snow melting and then this huge amount of water coming downstream at times which in the past didn't happen. It's the same situation in Kenya. So we do face the harsh effects of the global warming, and our mountain peaks are having much less snow, and it is leading to changes. It affects the wildlife in the area. It affects the plants. It affects the whole ecosystem when you have that kind of a change. So I think I'll stop there, and I'll let Easter have an opportunity to also comment.
One of the effects on, yes, as Rosalind has said, is that when we look at what also comes in the what is unpacked from what is in the snow is also something which we need to be worried about, because one of the things which then happens is that there are all these microorganisms and microorganisms which have been stayed in the snow for a very long time. And when you look at then new sort of a new ecosystem coming from those particular species, it is also something which are we prepared for or not? Because this type of microorganisms come into our water, so it means that they get into the system where they were not supposed to be in the system. So it is going to be something which we need to look at, is that are we prepared even as a nation to know what, with the melting peaks and with the changing environment, what might be an earth, what was protected because they lived in a certain type of environment? So if that type of environment is then thrown out of limbo, what happens? So that is also something which we then need to look at. And then also within the particular spaces where we are saying that we were displaced because of the issues of the water, how many of the people who then whose livelihoods will again will be, they will still be displaced? And it means that with the rising water, there'll be shrinking land spaces where people can actually live and people can actually work. So if that happens in the spaces where we are, people have not been taught, or people have not been um, taught to think differently of how then we will be able to survive. So I've that for me is a challenge, because biologically there are certain things which we are not talking about, and we are also living in spaces where information does not come out very easily from government. So even when you're talking about any space where scientists are giving feedback to communities, it's too high level and no information gets back to communities. The effects will then be at community level, where probably you'll be getting all these new diseases or new microorganisms in your soil where people plant. So what then will we have in those particular spaces where things are happening differently? But then also with that particular change, then we are seeing even the weather patterns have changed completely within the spaces where we are. For example, I'm speaking from Kisumu, where in January it was supposed to be a very hot period. So within the hot period now we are having extreme rain, and people did not plan for it. So part of it is that the whole shifted patterns of what is happening is that people are not well prepared, and we will have a bigger challenge if we do not address it. as effectively as we should have some time back. So the conversation still, those from the mountain, what are we speaking about? Those from the lakes, what are we speaking about? They are twinned because the mountain, when it is melting, the water sources come all the way down to the lake. Now, the microorganisms which are coming into the lake are changing the ecosystem of the lake. So that is also something which we need to be worried about. There'll be new organisms within the lake which we have not thought of. So if those things are changed and into the rivers, so when all these new microorganisms are coming into the lake and to the rivers, are we prepared? Are we prepared for the change ecosystem within the lake region? I don't think we are. And I don't think communities are. And it is something which we need to think about very critically.
Thank you so much, ladies. You have provided way more information than I think that we had bargained for. Thank you for that. Um, so as we look to close out today, I would just like to reiterate a few things that we spoke about at the top of the hour. Um, One of the things is that we utilize our efforts to spotlight projects and practitioners working for a greater good to help to solve notable issues in equitable cities and regions. Hence, why it is that Rosalind and Easter is currently on this climate change conference. We speak as we speak. The Global Climate Change Conference, notably GC3, is designed to interest individuals to make the climate change agenda a priority, to bring awareness and to offer logical perspectives through possible solutions. Of course, we believe that the best solutions are effective, partnered ecosystems that can result from collaboration and engagement across innumerable sectors and disciplines. We are all female gathered here today who work in various industries. Of course, it is Fida herself. She outlined a few things that she does on her end, but collaboratively, we are one world, just living in different sections of the world as well. Of course, for Rosalind, she's a serial entrepreneur, just like myself. And she's here lending her expertise in terms of climate change and how much it's adversely affecting the various areas that they are residing in. It's unfortunate that a huge portion of our global audience fail to recognize the impact climate change has placed on our livelihood, and that affects ultimately our food, health, and energy. Our mission here today is to bring together global leaders, all sectors, to catalyze lasting relationships, alliances, and partnerships in an effort that is to share knowledgeable expertise and best practices to tackle the climate change agenda. Earlier, we heard from Rosalind. And so if you're just joining, this video will be active. So you can always go back and double check and review and as well rewind to find out the things that she spoke about in terms of climate justice, where it is that she lent her expertise. We have Easter as well, who is also speaking on the effects of climate change. It is a pleasure seeing all of us coming together and for each speaker who took the time out of their busy schedule to lend their voices to a valid subject. It is my belief that prioritizing effective small steps that can be taken to decrease the effects of atmospheric carbon dioxide, immediate actions need to be taken in order to reduce the gradual warming of the Earth's temperature. Right here, I'm in the US, but of course, it is residing in the US and on the Northeast. It's, when you look at the weather, it's kind of like we're playing Powerball. We are going from 70 degrees to 20 degrees to 10 degrees, from having a possible running, going for a jog outside, and the next day you're freezing. So, of course, it is that we're looking at issues where government needs to work on reducing gradual warming of the Earth's temperature. However, we also need to take small steps in terms of what's going on. We are looking at the melting of the ice sheets, the possible extinction of plants and animals due to global warming as well. It is very important that we as individuals, and not just to depend on government, take action to combat climate change and its impact to numerous communities, as we are seeing just now. Of course, it is my belief as well that we must confront all energy risk with urgency. Leading back to the Paris Agreement that was adopted in 2015, and I quote, aims to strengthen the global response to the threat of climate change by keeping a global temperature rise this century well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. The agreement also aims to strengthen the ability of countries to deal with the impacts of climate change through appropriate financial flows, a new technology framework, and an enhanced capacity building framework. It is a known fact that just about every country is affected by climate change, a threat to our global economies. The time to act is now. And so we're grateful that for Easter and Olin, who has actually talked about some persons are also unaware that you could be in Kenya, in Nairobi, where in the capital it can be 70, 80 degrees, but on the other end, there could also be snow there as well. So it's a great question, great responses in terms of how climate change has affected Kenya on a whole right now. Within the past few years, and I wouldn't just say months, we have seen a rise in the carbon dioxide, that is the CO2 levels. And each and every day, the weather patterns are changing. Sea levels are rising, and weather events are becoming more extreme. While we continuously search for systemic change, and I do say systemic change because it is of due relevance, there's also the need to be a search to secure a more sustainable economy, preferably one that works for both people and planet. I don't think it should be one-sided, where it is that we are looking at the planet and not just at ways to improve how, as individuals, we can make small change to adapt to new things as well. We are also seeing that there's a climate change as already exacerbate storms and disasters across the aisle. We are waking up to daily threats. It is my belief that if we do not act fast, we will be faced with food and water scarcity sooner than we imagine. And I think we have also seen that as well. Some of our grocery stores, the shelves are empty, but over time, these are things that are not just going to affect our grocery stores, but affect us indirectly. We must take immediate actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and build in climate resilience. A major priority is that there is a need to trigger long-term systemic shifts that can change the trajectory of CO2 levels in the atmosphere. So what are some of the things that we can do to solve the climate change issues? To address climate change, we have to vastly increase our efforts as well. What does that involve? Much is happening around the world, of course. Yes, the investments in renewable energy have soared, but so much more needs to be done. We strongly encourage realistic plans. Energy transformation is of great priority. Industrial systems, when we talk about the industrial systems and transportation, food, agriculture, and forestry systems. This helps ensure that we can limit the rise in global temperature. Yes, a part of our world have adopted the Paris Agreement, as I spoke about earlier, in which all countries are committed to take action to address climate change. Yes, more businesses and investors need to commit themselves to lowering their emissions. The result would be a boost to business and also adding economic value in an already poverty-stricken economy. And I am almost sure that unless we're living under a rock, it's something that has affected even if you have money in your pocket, we have seen the effects of the poverty-stricken economy and face some kind of, um, you know, some kind of restrictions as well as it pertains to our daily life. As we work to address the climate emergency, it is my belief that there should be prioritized post-pandemic recovery plans in place. It is my belief that when I go back and I look at the 2018 climate report that was done by the IPCC. The IPCC is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And when you have a chance, you can take a look at that report. But I think it is worth revisiting. It is a report that provides clear benefits to persons, not just the planet. Natural ecosystem works to limit global warming as we work to secure a more sustainable and equitable society. So for anyone that would like a copy of the report, you can send me a message and I will get you a copy of the message via the IPCC. Again, that is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, where you yourself can look it over. I do believe that we have been in a pandemic since 2020. However, this is a report that came out in 2018. Yes, there are various parts in that report that can be enhanced, but it is a clear footwork in terms of things that we can look on going into the future as well. I believe that together we can work to take care of the planet by making choices that have less harmful effects on the environment. We can be part of the solution as well as to influence change. So you ask, what are some of the recommendations? Okay, and I take the recommendations via the United Nations. I like to visit and to be a part of what the United Nations have in place as well, because I also think that it's a clear, equitable plan, in action plan in terms of that can be adopted across the aisle, and most definitely don't have to depend on government to actually adhere to some of the principles. Where it is that sectors of government, businesses, and industries are top priority, so are our world leaders. Let's collectively take action. The initiative to urge persons within our city, as much as your local bank or even your peers, to take action toward net zero emissions. The production, the processing of transport, consumption, and disposal of food all contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. To reduce the impact on climate, to buy local and seasonal food, to eat more plant-based meals, use up what you have, and to compose of leftovers. And these are directives that comes directly from the United Nations website. When you have a chance, you can go there. As I've said, these are applicable across the aisle. Much of our electricity and heat are also powered by coal, oil, and gas, and airplanes and cars also run on fossil fuels. Yes, we should work to reduce the carbon footprint, buy less energy at home. Remember as well that as creatives, I think we are all creatives as well. We work within different sectors. However, we do share that creative space. Creative actions and solutions are always a plus, as it helps to inspire others. So planning different climate change directives, whether it be a webinar, whether it be something to educate others about climate change, different small steps that they can take, sharing the United Nations website, talking about, for instance, Agora. Okay, it is my recommendation for persons to join reputable foot soldiers such as Agora, and where you can commit to, their My Climate Action initiative as well. I do believe that these are some of the things and the directives that we should look forward to, and not only depend on government, because it plays a role in terms of what the outcome will be as well. So, with that in mind, I would like to hear from any questions from the last few minutes, any questions from our audience, as well as for Rosalind or Easter to brief us on their experience with this global climate change conference, and if they felt as if what exactly their views are, and with the community that they serve and the listening audience, if they felt like their message got across to various persons across the aisle. Rosalind, or Easter. Easter, would you like to go first, just in case you have to get on your plane?
Yeah. Okay. I need to get. What I'd like to say is that as part of this engagement, I believe that unless we have a collective of community persons who then are engaged, then we'll still be sitting here a few years or another century, then still speaking about the same thing. And if you're looking at that collective voice, who is the person with the urgency to start speaking about this particular issue? Who is the person with the land who we are talking about when you're talking about the issues of plant-based? If you're looking at the issues of the plant-based, then we have to be able to say that those who are engaged must be from the household, must be from the village unit, must be able to understand that if you want to protect your environment, plant a tree. Our forefathers did that. Their trees are still there in the communities where we come from. Cut one, plant one. Use this to do this. Use the medicinal plants, use the herbs, use this to ensure that your soil is protected. Use this type of plant so that you do not have to use pesticides, which then also contribute to certain things. So part of the engagement, which then we are looking at, is that for me, this conversation must be downstepped. It must be community owned. It must be community led. But as an African feminist, I want women at the center of that particular conversation. I want girls at the center of that conversation, because if they're not at the center of that conversation within that spaces where we are, then they'll be continue being left out because of the patriarchal nature of the societies where they come from. So they must be included so that it's a societal issue. So yes, it is possible to be done, but we must have more urgency to it, because otherwise we are already getting extremely late in this particular action which we want to take. Thank you.
Thanks, Easter. Rosalind?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Green, and thank you very much. The conversations that we've had, the questions that have come from the participating viewers. Thank you, Easter, so much. I've learned so much from this discourse. And I'm in total agreement with Easter's sentiments that the conversation, the solutions will come from household level. We need to unpack all of the great ratifications and the great plans that are coming from national, international level, national level, to come down to the community level, because it's the communities who are impacted, and it's the communities, that's where the change starts. So I loved when Dr. Green shared a lot of the comments, and even in the videos that we've been watching, about the change begins with us, and it's the small little things that we do every day which build up, that we can do simple things like planting a tree. If every household planted a tree, when you cut a tree, plant a tree. If we do things at household level, it builds up to national level, and we are part of the solution. So as much as we will continue to lobby, to encourage global collaboration, public-private partnerships, we each and every one have a role to play. And I was very deliberate in choosing that my lecture was around the impact of climate change on persons with disabilities. In this case, I focused on albinism, which is not something that comes out as loud as it should. Just because when we ensure that the most vulnerable of our communities are catered for, then everyone within the community is catered for. So it's not by accident that we should ensure that we take care of the most vulnerable in our community. And when we address the impacts, the negative impacts on them, everyone in the community is taken care of. So I would continue to encourage that. I am an advocate for persons with disabilities. I'm an advocate for invisible disabilities, and I'm very proud that I've had a chance to link that to this conversation on climate change. I can see some of the comments coming in from the audience. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening in. And as Dr. Green said, the video is going to be active online on YouTube. Please continue to engage. I love that Dr. Green said that anyone who wants to have access to some of these documents, they should be made available. Let's read them and then unpack them. Unpack them within your communities. Reach out to the leaders within your communities. Make demands, because the changes, the impact on environment affect us at household level. So I'm very delighted. I'm very pleased. I'm very honored to have been a part of this conversation. Thank you very much, Dr. Green.
Thank you so much, Rosalind. We appreciate you wholeheartedly. You know that as well. Okay, so to our audience, we appreciate you coming through and listening, whether you're with whichever capacity it is that you have logged on today, whether it be through any of the mediums, YouTube, my website, or other mediums as well. My message to everyone is that, as we look at various countries and places, we should start to look for new ways to stabilize. As we look for new ways to stabilize exactly the economy, knowing that we have been within a COVID period and we're just getting back, not even to reality. We're nowhere close to reality as yet. That to bear certain things in mind in terms of the climate change and being operative within our own right as well. Thinking as well in terms of our disposal of food, and knowing as well that it contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, that we need to take small steps as well to ensure that our electricity and our heat, more importantly, we can go back to, as it is that you're powered by coal, gas, and oil, it is that we work to reduce the carbon footprint by using less energy at home. So for anyone who would like to actually be a part of this initiative, you can also reach out to myself. The Global Climate Change Conference, again, is designed to interest individuals to make climate change agenda a priority as well. It is our belief that, again, some of the best solutions are effective when we partner ecosystems that can result from collaborative as well, as we are doing here today, collaborating with Easter and Rosalind to bring to you guys exactly what it is that you're signing up for. There are a few comments that we'll share. I see a lot of different comments that are coming in now. And so Rosalind, we have one of your colleagues that left you a message. It's great seeing you here, and as well, how do individuals needing support to lobby, and what are you doing with regards to climate change get support and opportunities? So hi, Bernice. This is something that we spoke about earlier. And so if it is that you would like, I would much more importantly, I am here and lobbying for anyone who would need support as well. You can reach out to myself. I will share an email within the chat and with you guys as well. And I would like to share the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report from 2018. I do believe that if we go back and take a look at the 2018 climate report, that there are certain things that can be enhanced within different things that we do as daily activities. And again, not to be dependent on government, but there are steps that we ourselves can take. So yes, Bernice, I more importantly would like to share that with yourself. And as well as we look to have future climate change events and looking to be in-person events and not so virtual as we get back out there, I look to partner with various industries who would like to be a part of the initiative. So I will share the email address as well. It will be shared within the YouTube link, but for educational purposes as well. And for direct contact, you may send your email to intlstarz@gmail.com. And I will also drop it in the comments here for anyone who would like to be a part as well. We really appreciate you guys coming through and sharing and caring as well. Your support for the major fact that you are here today tells that, yes, climate change, you are interested. You would like to also know of new ways that it is that you can communicate across the aisle and do your little bit in terms of getting the word out in terms of the industry. I appreciate everyone taking the time out to be here. Kudos to Roslyn and kudos to Easter. I have a very hard time pronouncing their names. Ladies, I know you'll forgive me. But as well, I thank the audience, wherever you are, and you're joining us today. I really appreciate the fact that you took the time out to be here and to actually sign in and be a part of this. So if you would like more information and if you would like to join the initiative, not just on climate change, but other initiatives that we have as well, you are more than welcome to send an email to intlstarz@gmail.com. I will also be including the email address within this section on YouTube as well, where it is that you will have access to it. You can send and you can be a part of our events once it is we get outside, and we will be more of an in-person event as well. Okay, so that is all I have for now. It's been a pleasure. Shout out to Aya Gift as well. Thanks for coming through and showing your support. And we appreciate it. Ladies, thanks for being here again.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Hi, yes.